So, the Brienne story is a puzzling one for most readers, with many dismissing it as world-building filler. And we can certainly see why one might come to that conclusion. After finishing the fast-paced A Storm of Swords, readers want to know what happens next with Jon, Dany, and Tyrion, but are instead given a slow-moving tale about Brienne wandering the Crownlands and the Riverlands in what appears to be a pointless adventure. Her mission is to find Sansa and Dantos, whose fate, as readers, we already know. Sansa is in the Vale and Dantos is dead. And so, with little investment, the reader follows a meandering Brienne who gets involved in a spattering of minor A Storm of Swords plotlines that most people had forgotten about or didn't particularly care about in the first place. In fact, the adventures that Brienne participates in A Feast for Crows were deemed so unimportant to the main storyline that the showrunners of Game of Thrones omitted every single one from the show. That's right, every single one. Other than the general fact that both book Brienne and Podrick and show Brienne and Podrick venture off to find Sansa, there is not a single element adapted from Brienne's story in A Feast for Crows to screen. But is it really fair to dismiss the Brienne chapters in this way? Are they really pointless? Why did our author even bother? Well, first off, Brienne's chapters are certainly not filler, at least not in the mind of our author. In fact, early drafts of the fourth novel, when it was about a third done prior to the book being split into 2 volumes, A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons, there were already 3 Brienne chapters written, with the final A Feast for Crows having 8. If one were really going to point to world-building filler or stories that went long and got out of control, it would be Jon's 13 chapters, Daenerys and Barristan's 14 chapters, or Tyrion and Jon Conn's 14 chapters, all from A Dance with Dragons. No, assuming Brienne's chapter rate would remain constant, it appears the Brienne story actually ended up as long as our author intended, or at least ballooned less than the other storylines. And our author has never expressed any difficulty with writing Brienne, unlike, say, Daenerys. From what we can tell, the Brienne story ended up as our author planned. And it's important to note that our author has on several occasions publicly expressed disappointment that Lady Stoneheart, a huge part of the Brienne story, was excluded from the show. He has stated that including Stoneheart would be the change he most wished he could make. And I'm going to be a bit bold here and say that Stoneheart is not just a piece of the Brienne story. No, I would say Stoneheart is its linchpin thematically. Without her, the Brienne story in A Feast for Crows is, well, empty. In fact, I would argue that without Stoneheart, Brienne's story before that in A Clash of Kings and A Storm of Swords is, well, really, really stupid. What I'm saying is that the Brienne story in A Feast for Crows is very important and anything but filler. Though there does appear to be a disconnect between what the fans believe is important and what our author does. So, what exactly was our author doing with the Brienne story? Well, let's go back a bit and talk about Brienne thematically and how we should be viewing her chapters. We are first introduced to Brienne in Catelyn II, A Clash of Kings, at Renly's melee at Bitterbridge. "Sir Colin," Catelyn said to her escort, "who is this man, and why do they mislike him so?" Sir Colin frowned. "Because he is no man, my lady. That's Brienne of Tarth, daughter to Lord Selwyn the Evenstar." "Daughter?" Catelyn was horrified. "Brienne the Beauty, they name her, though not to her face, lest they be called upon to defend those words with their bodies." So, right off the bat, we are introduced to Brienne in a gender-bending and sex-bending fashion. Catelyn misidentifies Brienne as a man because Brienne's physical body and occupation signal male and man, but Brienne is actually a cisgendered heterosexual woman. And we learn in this society that that's a huge problem. Sir Colin specifically tells us that Brienne is misliked because she is a woman doing a man's occupation, and Catelyn is horrified by the entire situation. A woman acting like a man. The horror. Let's keep in mind that even Renly, a homosexual man who is forming a not-so-subtle Rainbow Guard and who is giving Brienne a place in it, has little sympathy for her predicament and actually believes she's absurd and grotesque. And it's not because she's ugly, but because she's a woman who is not acting within her social norms. Beauty, they called her, mocking. The hair beneath the visor was a squirrel's nest of dirty straw, and her face? Brienne's eyes were large and very blue, a young girl's eyes, trusting and guileless. But the rest? Her features were broad and coarse, her teeth prominent and crooked, her mouth too wide, her lips so plump they seemed swollen. 1,000 freckles speckled her cheeks and brow, and her nose had been broken more than once. Pity filled Catelyn's heart. Is there any creature on earth as unfortunate as an ugly woman? Now, yes, Catelyn's comments here are ridiculously rich person focused. Highborn people, whether male or female, ugly or comely, have it fantastic relative to the small folk. But this is largely a story about highborn people, and Brienne too is highborn, and so in the highborn context, Catelyn's thoughts really illuminate Brienne's situation. And with Brienne's life, we have to talk about human agency a little. Agency is essentially power within certain boundaries. In the game of chess, bishops have agency diagonally, rooks horizontally and vertically. They both have power, but it's limited within the rules of the game. And the same can be said of men and women in society, and specifically the world of Ice and Fire. Men have an ability to act within certain bounds, and women have the ability to act within certain bounds. And so, although perhaps overstated, Catelyn is commenting on the agency of women in society by saying that pretty women have greater power than ugly women. Catelyn, Cersei, Asha, Melisandre, Arianna, Sansa, Daenerys, and even Arya all utilize their looks and sexual appeal as something that can assist them in getting what they want. But this is a tool that Brienne does not have in any way. And yes, while looks matter some for men in this society, the power it holds matters little compared to, say, birthright or fighting ability or intellect. Jaime Lannister is an absolutely beautiful man, but his looks are not how he wields power. It's notable that his looks never assist him. So Brienne is a woman who has limited power as a woman because she's ugly, and yet when she tries to utilize abilities that she does have in the sphere of men, she is spurned by everyone around her. And the insult Brienne the Beauty perfectly encompasses this. It, on the one hand, dismisses Brienne from gaining power in the world of men, while reminding her that she is also powerless in the world of women. Now, it's important to note that Renly gives Brienne some degree of power as a member of the Rainbow Guard, and it's significant that he dies. This is a common occurrence in Ice and Fire. A powerful protector character, whether it be Ned or Khal Drogo, dies, and our character must reinvent themselves. In the case of Arya and Dany, their hair is lost, a symbol of their femininity, and they are forced to act in a completely new manner. These women are now acting outside of the patriarchy, inventing new ways to have agency. However, following the death of her patriarch, Brienne does something entirely different. "I do not know your son, my lady." She looked up. "I could serve you, if you would have me." Catelyn was startled. "Why me?" The question seemed to trouble Brienne. "You helped me in the pavilion when they thought that I had... You were innocent. Even so, you did not have to do that. You could have let them kill me. I was nothing to you." Perhaps I did not want to be the only one who knew the dark truth of what had happened there, Catelyn thought. "Brienne, I have taken many well-born ladies into my service over the years, but never one like you. I am no battle commander. No, but you have courage. Not battle courage, perhaps, but, I don't know, a kind of woman's courage. And I think when the time comes, you will not try and hold me back. Promise me that you will not hold me back from Stannis." And so here we find that Brienne has decided to not follow Robb, but to follow Catelyn, who she admires for her femininity. Not physical beauty femininity or ladylike femininity or anything like that, but a woman's courage. Brienne cannot quite put her finger on exactly what a woman's courage is, but it seems to be related to Brienne's perception that Catelyn is nurturing or protective. And it's extremely important that Brienne follows Catelyn and not Robb. Catelyn actually tries to get her to follow Robb, offering her vengeance for Renly, but Brienne refuses and chooses to be Catelyn's shield despite definitely wanting that vengeance. Notably, in this exchange, violence is coded male, while protection is coded female. Yes, dicks are swords and swords are dicks. Our author is not exactly subtle about this, and I'm warning you now, there's going to be a lot more dick and vagina symbolism to come. Now, Brienne certainly doesn't go full traditional lady or even solely noble protector at this point, but it seems to be a compromising step embracing both male and female, masculine and feminine, sword and shield. Brienne even makes it quite clear that her service to Catelyn will not interfere with her goal to kill Stannis. Brienne is trying to be both male and female, both avenger and protector at once. So later on, Brienne's story then passes from the point of view of Catelyn to that of Jaime as we transition from A Clash of Kings to A Storm of Swords. Brienne is tasked with protecting Jaime as they venture to King's Landing, and then she is to protect the daughters of Catelyn. This exchange of Jaime for 2 girls was rejected by Robb for sexist reasons, but has been pushed by Catelyn clandestinely. Now, as we transition from Catelyn's female perspective to Jaime's male perspective, it's a fairly big plot point that Brienne is often called wench by Jaime. Wench, though literally meaning woman, is a derogatory term for a woman. Our author is actually highlighting a very curious aspect of language. The word for woman is often derogatory, showing the sexism of society. The female of master, mistress, means a woman for extramarital sex. The female of courtier, courtesan, means prostitute. The female of sir, madam, means a manager of prostitutes. The housewife contraction hussy means disreputable woman. The list goes on and isn't even limited to English. Now, Brienne does have an insult for Jaime. She calls him Kingslayer and berates him for breaking his oath to King Aerys. Whatever the case, in Jaime 3, Jaime and Brienne arrive in Maidenpool, the legendary site of the tale of Jonquil and Florian the Fool, although the pools are now filled with corpses. And we get a bit of foreshadowing as Jaime requests a bath with Brienne. The two fight, and then are captured by the brave companions. And it's then that the mummers begin to speak of raping Brienne. Jaime attempts to intervene, and his sword hand is cut off. Now, at this point in our story, Jaime and Brienne become mirrored. Jaime is emasculated as he loses his ability to fight, his sword, his male-associated agency in society, and he is now like Brienne, without power within the bounds of his gender. In fact, this mirroring actually goes a bit further. Jaime is beautiful, a useful skill if he were a woman, and Brienne is a great fighter, a useful skill if she were a man. They are in fact a beautiful lady and a great knight, with their sexes inverted, something that is explicitly pointed out by the brave companions. And the fact that Brienne and Jaime's skills and sexes are inverted is a farce to the bloody mummers. Anyway, in Jaime 4, A Storm of Swords, 3 brave companions begin to plan their rape of Brienne. They are Shagwell, Roarg, and Zolo the Fat. I mention them by name as at least 2 of these individuals return to our story, and the third will almost certainly be returning to our story. Shagwell, Roarg, and Zolo's plans are foiled though, as Jaime yells sapphires, implying that Brienne's ransom would be reduced if she were raped. Jaime is beaten, but he saves Brienne from trauma. The 2 then make it to Harrenhal, the castle of Catelyn's mother's house, the Wents. Catelyn's maternal heritage, by the way, is actually never mentioned in the story proper. It's tucked away in the appendix, and Catelyn's Harrenhal connection becomes very important later, so we're going to put a pin in this. Now, quite significantly, Jaime and Brienne share a bath together in Jaime 5, and it's in this bath that Jaime explains why he broke his Kingsguard oath and slew Aerys. Aerys was going to burn all of King's Landing with wildfire, and so Jaime's oath-breaking was actually a moral act, saving the lives of thousands. After the bath, Brienne is then forced into a pink dress, which does not suit her at all, and she and Jaime have dinner with Roose Bolton. Jaime then ventures off to King's Landing, leaving Brienne behind. However, in Jaime 6, during his travels, Jaime discovers that Brienne's ransom offer was perceived as low by the brave companions because of Jaime's lie about the sapphires. After a dream where Brienne asks for a sword, Jaime returns to Harrenhal where he finds that the brave companions have thrown Brienne, still in her pink dress, into a bear pit where she is fighting the bear with a wooden sword. Jaime jumps in with her, and then Jaime's men end up shooting the bear. Jaime also declares that Brienne should not be called Wench but her name Brienne, and that he should not be called Kingslayer but his name Jaime. Now, there is quite a bit of symbolism to unpack with the bear pit. First off, it's clearly a reference to The Bear and the Maiden Fair, a song in Westeros. And that song is pretty much about sexism and rape. In the song, a maiden doesn't want to dance with a bear, but the bear forces her to dance while he licks the honey from her hair. Additionally, the maid is fair, the valued quality of a woman in a traditional society, while the bear is fierce, the valued quality for men in a traditional society. Also, there is this notable line in the song. And down the road from here to there, 3 boys, a goat, and a dancing bear. The 3 boys are likely Brienne's 3 would-be rapists, Shagwell, Rorg, and Zolo. The goat is likely Vargo Hoat, also known as the Black Goat of Qohor, and the bear is the bear and all it represents, the patriarchy, or toxic masculinity or machismo or whatever you want to call it. The butch, cruel and violent negative aspects of traditional men's culture. And so when Jaime finds Brienne, she is being forced to wear the pink dress, a symbol of traditional femininity, fighting off the bear, the patriarchal sexist world, feebly with a wooden sword. And so we have a statement from our author here. Women, forced into their traditional roles, are ill-equipped to deal with the dangers and brutality of men in their traditional roles. In fact, men too are often ill-equipped to deal with the patriarchy. Jaime is, after all, also in the bear pit. And if there's doubt that this is the statement being made by our author, we can look to Samwell 1, a chapter where Sam remembers the make a man of you abuse of his father, which is followed by him remembering being yelled at by the old bear and being attacked by an undead bear, which is followed by Gren telling him to sing The Bear and the Maiden Fair. We can also look to the contemporary chapter Jon 5, which happens just 3 chapters before Jaime 6. What if you were stolen by someone you hated? He'd have to be quick and cunning and brave to steal me, so his sons would be strong and smart as well. Why would I hate such a man as that? Maybe he never washes, so he smells rank as a bear. Then I'd push him in a stream or throw a bucket of water on him. Anyhow, men shouldn't smell sweet like flowers. What's wrong with flowers? Nothing for a bee. For a bed, I want one of those. Ygritte made to grab the front of his breeches. Jon caught her wrist. What if the man who stole you drank too much? He insisted. What if he was brutal or cruel? He tightened his grip to make a point. What if he was stronger than you and liked to beat you bloody? I'd cut his throat while he slept. You know nothing, Jon Snow. Ygritte twisted like an eel and wrenched away from him. Now, I will say that the inclusion of the smelly bear in Jon's dialogue is a bit clumsy. Do bears even smell particularly bad? In this conversation between Jon and Ygritte about stealing women, that is, about rape, it's apparent our author is again referencing The Bear and the Maiden Fair. The difference, though, is that Ygritte is anything but a traditional woman, and she is well equipped to deal with the brutality of men. Now, our author likely isn't holding up the wildlings as a model society, at least not on the whole, but it's an important point being made. Women can be equipped with the proper skills to function better, that is, give them more agency in society. And with this, we should wonder if the real problem is really Brienne not having a sword, or if the real problem is that big fierce bear. Which brings us to the conclusion of the Brienne story in A Storm of Swords. In Jaime 9, after Brienne and Jaime discover that Catelyn has been killed, they decide that their vow to protect Sansa Stark still stands, and so Jaime presents Brienne with Oathkeeper, a sword reforged from the Stark family sword Ice. Brienne will be protecting Sansa with her father's blade. Jaime also re-establishes calling Brienne Wench and himself Kingslayer before sending Brienne off on her mission. Now, I will say, on a personal level between Brienne and Jaime, the scene is nice and heartwarming. The characters have learned to respect each other and show that they care for one another, and Jaime is assisting Brienne in fulfilling her personal goal of being knightly. And it appears that Jaime is becoming more honorable. He wants to fulfill his oath to Catelyn. However, on a thematic level, the scene is simply a disaster. First off, the story clearly tells us that oaths are not necessarily good. In the bathhouse at Harrenhal, we find out that the oath that Jaime made to Aerys should have been broken. It was actually great that he broke that oath. In fact, in the Jaime chapter right before he sends off Brienne, he lectures the Kingsguard about how their vows of obedience shouldn't really be that absolute. So it's actually rather odd that the story comes around to the position that oath-keeping is something that should be celebrated. Oaths are complicated, yet Jaime's discussion with Brienne about morality is very austere. Yes, protecting Sansa, a child lost in the world, is a good thing, but that would have been a good thing regardless of the oath, which is the second point that needs to be made. Protecting people doesn't require oaths. Catelyn's initial act of courage to defend Brienne was made without any oath. Brienne specifically tells us this, that Brienne was nothing to Catelyn, but Catelyn did it anyway based on her nurturing woman's courage. Also, when Jaime saves Brienne from the rape and from the bear, he doesn't do those things because of any specific oath. I mean, it's kind of knightly and all, but that's not why he's doing it. And it's worth noting that Brienne herself has never taken a knightly oath, and yet she's probably the most moral character in our story. So oaths are at best complicated and at worst irrelevant, so why the sword? Then there's all of the problems that Jaime and Brienne faced during their trip. The need for the quest was the result of sexism, and the derogatory treatment of Brienne was also the result of sexism. But this sexism wasn't just Jaime's problem, it was systematic. That's the bear that needs to be slain, the entire system. And yet the characters are intent on keeping oaths, essentially an upkeep of tradition. Let's keep in mind that most of the systems in Ice and Fire and the entire feudal structure are based on oaths. Vassals swear fealty to lords and then follow them into war, and the sons of the slain vow revenge against those who have wronged them in a cycle of violence. This is actually the precise thing that Catelyn was so very tired of that motivated her into trying to trade Jaime for Sansa and Arya. So it's actually kind of a bad thing that a patrilineally inherited sword, Ice, renamed after oaths, the mechanism for keeping the system in place, is being used to rescue Sansa. Not to mention the fact that Ice doesn't really have a great track record of being an honorable sword. It was used unjustly to kill Garrett at story's beginning, then unjustly to kill Lady, then unjustly to kill Ned himself. The point of all of this is that if Brienne simply went off with Oathkeeper and completed her quest to save Sansa, being knightly and keeping her oath to Catelyn, it would be a horrible story that disregards all of the themes established in A Clash of Kings and A Storm of Swords. No, something else needs to happen, something that at least tries to address the problems presented, something that makes Brienne grow as a character. Luckily, we have Brienne's story from A Feast for Crows, and luckily we have Lady Stoneheart, and we will talk about why A Feast for Crows is so important next time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.